So let's talk about something pretty incredible. We're calling this the identity of flight. And it's really the story of how two regular guys, a couple of bicycle mechanics from Ohio, did more than just build an airplane. They used this radical way of thinking, this mental framework, to literally reshape reality. This isn't just about physics and wingspans. It's about how a powerful, focused belief can make the impossible, well, possible.
But before we get into all that, let me ask you something straight up. When you woke up this morning, did you consciously actually decide who you wanted to be today? Or, and hey, no judgment, we all do it, did you just kinda slip into autopilot? You know the drill. Alarm goes off, grab the coffee, same commute, just repeating yesterday's moves and hoping, somehow, for a different result tomorrow.
You see, for most of us, our brain is just a record of the past. It's a collection of everything we've seen and done, so we keep thinking in a way that's equal to our past, living on that left side of the screen. But the Wright brothers? They made a different choice, a really powerful one. They decided to think greater than their environment. And that single decision, right there, is the key to this whole story. And here's the very first step they took, and it is so crucial. They didn't start with a goal, they started with an identity. The mission wasn't just to build a flying machine, it was to become a flyer. It's a subtle difference, but it changes everything. You know, the author James Clear put it perfectly. He said, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. That's the foundation for all of this. It's not about one single heroic leap. It's about the hundreds of tiny, consistent votes you cast every single day for that person you want to be. And this is what that shift looks like. A goal, building a machine, that's external. It's a thing. But an identity, becoming an aeronaut, that's internal. That's who you are. And once you start seeing yourself as that person, your actions just naturally fall in line. Suddenly, tinkering with an engine for hours isn't a chore anymore. It's just what aeronauts do. So how did they fuel this new identity? Well, that brings us to step 2. And this one is a real game changer. They learned to reward the verbs, not the nouns. Now, the psychology behind this is absolutely fascinating. Think about it. Our society loves to hand out labels, right? We call people smart or talented. But research actually shows that this can backfire. It makes people afraid to fail because they don't want to risk losing that shiny label. But the Wrights, they focused on the verbs, the tinkering, the adjusting, the persisting. A crash wasn't a failure. It wasn't a sign that they weren't smart. It was just feedback on their effort. Okay, so you've got this new identity, you're focused on the verbs, but how do you actually make it happen, day after day? How do you make it stick? That's where step 3 comes in. You have to master the entry point. So, what is an entry point? It's that tiny, almost invisible moment that decides what happens next. It's not about running a whole marathon. It's about mastering the simple act of putting on your running shoes. That one little moment sets everything else in motion. And for the Wright brothers, their entry point was their bicycle shop. This is brilliant. They physically engineered their environment to make progress the easiest possible option. The tools they needed for wing designs were right there, parts were always accessible. The path of least resistance didn't lead to procrastination. It led straight to working on flight. So, the takeaway for you and me? It's simple, but it's profound. Just win the first 30 seconds of whatever you need to do. Lay out your gym clothes the night before. Open the blank document. Send that first simple email. Once you push through that tiny bit of initial friction, momentum is a powerful force, and it'll carry you the rest of the way. All right, step 4. We've talked about the physical environment. Now we're going to go deep inside the mind. This is about building a future in your imagination that is so vivid, so real, that your brain actually starts to believe it's already here. And look, this isn't some self-help fantasy. This is real neuroscience. Your personality, which is just how you consistently think, act, and feel, that's what creates your personal reality. It's a direct link. So if you want a new reality, maybe a world with airplanes, you have to first create and sustain a new personality. This is exactly what the Wright brothers did. They held that vision of flight so clearly and so often in their minds that their brains literally began to change, as if it had already happened. This rewired their selective attention. It's like they gave their brain a new search command. While everyone else's brain was searching for reasons this is impossible, their brains were actively scanning for clues to make this happen. And they found them. And that brings us to the final step, and honestly, maybe the most transformative one. What happens when your bold vision slams into the harsh reality of, gravity? Simple. You use the failure as fuel. Napoleon Hill captured this perfectly. He said, "Every adversity carries the seed of an equivalent benefit." And for the Wright brothers, this wasn't just a nice quote for a poster. This was a practical, hands-on engineering strategy. This was their loop. You can just picture it. A glider crashes into the sand. But instead of despair, they're immediately searching through the wreckage for that seed of benefit. What did this teach us? What did the broken wing tell us about drag? That lesson was the dividend, the real prize. And they'd take that prize, that piece of wisdom, invest it into the next design and launch again. A crash was never the end. It was just a data point. And here's the bottom line. With this kind of mindset, there is no such thing as an unprofitable experience. Every setback, every mistake, every single failure can be turned into strength, into wisdom, if you just choose to see it that way.
So let's just recap the 5 steps real quick. Number 1, become the person you want to be. Start with identity. 2, reward the effort, the verb, not the static label. 3, master the first 30 seconds. 4, live in your future reality today. And 5, use every failure as grist for the mill. Ultimately, the master key that unlocks all 5 of these is a positive mental attitude. It really is. It's the engine that drives this entire process. It's the profound truth that whatever your mind can conceive and truly, deeply believe, it can achieve. The Wright brothers used this exact framework to build a flying machine and change the entire world. So that really just leaves us with one essential question. What identity will you start casting votes for today?